So I'm doing a talk today on Meteor.JS, and this has been thus far my favorite platform by far and away, and I've actually done an application on it, so I can actually say that I've used it. But a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today is stuff that we've built on from like other lunch and learns. So like I'm expecting that everybody here knows the concepts of directives and understands kind of the higher level concepts we're talking about. Will be a slightly different because we're doing Angular 2. So this is actually true Angular 2, but you know what, you guys are all smart, you'll figure it out. So one of the things that we've been doing is we've been building really practical applications in our talks, and this one I thought would be really cool with the Lightspeed stuff coming up if we actually made this application interact with OpenStack, so we can actually do stuff using its APIs. So let's get started here. I posted a link to this repository on Slack if you guys wanted to follow along. I have commits for our steps, so that's just where I'll be going here. So let's go here to getting this open. I'll put this over here so I can see my notes, because I just realized I won't be able to see my notes otherwise. There we go. All right. So when you open it up, you'll be able to see in the GitHub repo, there isn't really a whole lot there to start out with. To actually get started with it, you have to install Meteor. So let me actually back up here. So MeteorJS is actually a layer between Node.js and your code. So you aren't actually interacting directly with Node. How there is, it's all Node syntax. It actually is built on Node, so everything is JavaScript. It's all normal, but you are not actually dealing directly with Node. There's that layer in between there, and likewise, it has its own package manager that does sit on top of Node, and but because of that, it does handle everything for you. So Node is the core programming language, and this is like a fairly extensive framework that sits on top of it that does a lot of stuff for you. So installing it is this command here. You run that command and it installs MeteorJS for you, similar to how you install Node.js.
You install Node first, though, right?
Yeah, you install Node first. So, and npm is also part of that. But so you start by installing that, and then to actually start an application is just as simple as typing Meteor, and then your application is running. To create the application, of course, you have to go through some basics here. So because we're doing Angular 2, there's a little bit more of setup here. Typically, if this is just a standard Meteor using Blaze and their basic stuff, you would just do Meteor create Lightspeed dashboard. That's it. You can start your application. You're ready to go. You can start using their templates. I don't like their templating system. I think it's pretty just okay. And I already know Angular, and I like Angular a lot, so let's do it. And since we like Angular, and Angular 2 is coming out, and now in beta for real, we can actually play with it. So to actually get it going is a little bit of leg lifting here, or leg work, and so you actually install Meteor, couple packages. This is how Meteor's package manager looks. So you do Meteor add the package, and this is kind of what I had to start with here for this first commit. Why is that going to me? All right, so this is kind of what it looks like, the initial package structure. You have a few files in your .meteor folder with all the packages listed out, And then once you have that, you just have a few files inside of your client folder, and you're set to go. Now, I think I had some notes in here about how this works. So, yeah. So let's go over here to IntelliJ. So you can see there's two primary folders here. There's client and server. To start out with, Meteor, what it does is it finds all of your JavaScript, finds all of your CSS, and puts it all together, minifies it, and spits it out. Now, because you were sharing it between the front end and the back end, typically what it would do is it takes all of the files everywhere and runs it both on the server and on the client. and that can of course get sticky. So what they do is anything that's inside of a folder called client, it only serves to the client, and server, it only serves to the server. So that's why this is set up the way it is. You have client and server. And so inside of server there really isn't anything. That's just what happens when it starts up. This file is not even necessary.
Is there code that is shared?
Yeah. So all code that isn't in server or isn't in client is shared between everybody, which is kind of cool.
That's in the .meteor folder up there?
No, this is the root of the application. .meteor just has stuff like project information, ID, packages, stuff like that.
So is it? Would you like create like your own like shared folder to designate it as being shared, or is it pretty much just you can call it fuzzy love and it doesn't?
You can call it whatever you want, and then it shares it automatically. And then we have our TypeScript file, which is what Angular 2 really likes, and this is literally all there is to it for getting started. And once you get it started,
Real quick,
Yep.
that by typing in with Meteor and it starts the application, you reboot. Does it start?
Yep. So you'll see kind of as this goes here. I'm just going to go down here. I'm going to type Meteor. And it's going to do a bunch of stuff here. It's going to start. It actually has its own packaged MongoDB that it runs by default. You can point it to an actual MongoDB instances if you want to.
Adds these all the services.
Yeah, it does. It literally does everything for you. Now it's actually compiling the application, compiling the HTML templates, minifying them, putting them all into just a package ready to deliver.
Do you ever have to do this again?
So as you continue developing, it'll notice file changes and just instantly get those for you. And it doesn't take this long. It just takes this long when it first starts up. It actually, compiling it and getting it running. So all right, so our application is running on localhost port 3000. We go over here, and there's our hello world. And so I'll show you quickly how that's set up. Our body, I just have our socially directive, this is just standard directive format. Or what do they call it in the other ones? Components or
Angular 2's components too, I think.
yeah. Oh, I think these are called directives. So, so this is our TypeScript file, just hello world. This just proves to us that it's actually putting everything together. Directives are compiling. Angular 2 is running.
And
This is
Angular 2 code?
This is Angular 2 code. Yes.
TypeScript, okay.
Yep. So that's really the basics of that. Let me make sure I didn't have any other notes here on that. Yep, yeah, Angular 2. All right, so now we got the basics in. We have the fundamental Meteor's running, right? So now let's get to, I'm going to get straight to the best part about this. It's data. The way that Meteor handles data is absolutely amazing. And this is what they call three-way data binding, which is like you have two-way data binding with Angular, which is front end, or you have your JavaScript DOM, and you have your JavaScript objects, and you have your HTML. They link automatically together. This is three-way data binding, which allows you to synchronize the front end, the back end, and the server all without doing anything. And I'm going to show you how that works real quick. So let's go back over here to, here it is. It's here, playing with data. Stop doing that.
Yeah, you're doing that on purpose. Check it. We like your picture.
Yeah. So let's see, what am I doing here? All right, here we go. So actually starting to play with data is stupidly simple. The key components here are, where's my servers file? Here, right here. So now right here what we're doing is actually defining the collection called servers. This is all we have to do to define servers as a collection, and to be read, written, everything done is done right there. That's it. Now to read from it, both on the front end or the back end, all you have to do is this line right here, servers.find. And now what I actually did is I populated the servers object in Angular to be reactive to everything that's going on. I mean, makes more sense once you see it. So let's pull this up here. And we can see it already refreshed the page for me. So I'm going to quickly add a server. So let's just say hello, add server. And then I'm going to do one other thing here. New window.
Wow.
And they're perfectly in sync with all the other browsers, everything else in the system. It's very, very cool. And we literally did that with 2 lines of code. All the other stuff, they're frilly things to like make the user interface play with it. But I got the server's object in my Angular scope, and it's done. It does everything else for you.
It's saving that data to the MongoDB.
It's saving the data to MongoDB, and I could refresh the page, whatever. It's all there. That is the bread and butter. That is the best thing about Angular or MeteorJS right there. Let's see here. So the thing to note about that too is with most applications that have real-time synchronization, like MyPraise, for example, where you have to send notifications out to everybody, the way we do that is if we have 5 servers, we have 5 servers that have to know that each of those 5 servers exist, which we have a separate server that manages all of them, which is like RabbitMQ or something, and manages the connections in between them. And then you have to manage when something is saved, you have to send it over to it and do all kinds of other things. Meteor doesn't do any of that. What's really cool is Meteor actually leverages a technology that MongoDB has built in right out of the box that allows it to push data updates directly from the database. So if I write a record to it, even in the console, it's going to update the user interface and all the servers that are attached to it just because I did an update. It does that all by itself and saves a ton of complication and overhead and all kinds of other things that are involved in it.
How does it know what browsers are open? I'm sorry.
Because you have a socket session open.
Oh, I see.
And that's how it communicates all this data back and forth. Let's see. So the other cool thing about this is because we have a shared front end and back end server. So the thing you'll note here is I have a folder called. That's not it. This is it. Server. Servers is not in client nor is it in server. So it's shared between both the front end and the back end. And so this file is therefore shared between both of them. And because it's TypeScript and so on, we can do type-defined stuff like you do in Java.
So what's TypeScript?
TypeScript is kind of like ES6, but it's a little bit more. It's got more involved in it. Yeah, it's got.
Who compiles it?
Meteor compiles it all automatically.
Does anything else use it, or just Meteor?
Angular. It's for Angular. So
this is a Meteor specific, it's Angular 2 specific.
This is Angular 2 specific, yes. So what this will allow us to do, and you'll see how we do this down the road, is we can actually have specific models for each object. So like we can have methods and stuff inside a server that we can use in any of the objects that we work with. And we'll see how that works in a little bit. The other thing that's cool about it is when it loads the data to the browser, it doesn't actually just load you JSON data and send it back and forth. What it's actually doing is it actually creates a very, very tiny instance of MongoDB on client browser. It actually creates a tiny little version of it where it stores the data, and that's why it can query back and forth, which also means you don't have to have promises. Because the data is already there, it can just immediately query it and get it back to you. So there's a lot of really cool things with it. Because of that, and because code is saved shared between the front end and the back end, it has optimistic saving, which allows you to save the data, and it's going to assume because it's sharing the same code that it knows what the answer is going to be. So it just does it like it got an answer from the server, and if the server responds with something other than what it was anticipating, it'll backtrack. But that's pretty cool. And yeah, so there's a lot of really cool things with this that go on, but now let's move on here a little bit. So we've kind of got some basic hello world stuff going on here. It's already, it's starting to play nicely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this database. So I can reset everything in Meteor just by doing Meteor reset. And just reset all of the records in MongoDB. And now let's get some more structure in here. So what I did is I removed the client and server folders in the root because that would just be stupid and annoying to have everything that's in client and server. You wouldn't be able to have any kind of folder structure or architecture to work with. So we seem to like domain-driven design. So what we can do now is I have everything in app, and then I have everything in the subsequent packages. And then what's cool is because it doesn't just look for stuff in client to send only to the client. It'll look for anything that's under the folder client and send that only to the client. So now I can have a package called base that has stuff that sends only to the client, and server that sends stuff only to the server. And then I can have nice domain-driven architecture. That's really all there is to that. I just kind of move files around. And the next one here is, why am I not? There we go. The next one here is I wrote a commit that deals specifically with OpenStack APIs. Now this is something that we didn't want to cover. This isn't about OpenStack. This is about Meteor. So this is, you can look this over if you want to. But I just wrote a client and a synchronization tool to keep the data that's in OpenStack, and it just pulls OpenStack for the latest updates, and then we can send data back to OpenStack using this library. And it doesn't require any direct integration with it. It's only working with the data that's in Mongo. So as you save data to Mongo, it will update it to OpenStack.
So is that really only on the server?
Yeah, this is only on the server. So yeah, that's why it's under, I think it should be, under app OpenStack server
What
client.
does this do? I thought it did that stuff automatically.
No, so what it's doing now, what we're doing is we got to talk to OpenStack, because this is just an
OpenStack isn't on.
No.
That's okay.
This
It's
is
not on Mongo, so you have
Yeah.
to translate. I gotcha.
Yep. And that's what all that this is. I'm not going to go into details about it. It's just, you can look at it if you want to. Alright, hang on 1 second here. Reset this file. This won't let me change branches. Yeah, it's just being annoying. No, I don't. Yeah? Alright. So, we have our OpenStack library. Now I'm going to kind of start pulling things together here. Let's look at our app.typescript file. This is the template for it. And you can see this is just standard Angular 2 syntax. We have a basic controller, we have some click actions, bindings, very basic items, and literally all we're doing now is we're just going to interact with that data that's already in Mongo that we're already synchronizing. You can see it's running now. So it's actually going through and pulling every 10 seconds to see what's going on in OpenStack. Come back over here. We can see a list of all of our items. So I'm going to go just as a test here. Let's save that. And if we go over to instances, it probably logged me out, but let's see.
So we can rename things.
What?
So we can rename things.
Yep.
Cool.
Let's see.
I didn't pass it.
Did I? Yeah,
I didn't
there it
know how
is.
to do it in the darn tool. The actual dashboard.
And of course, OpenStack's interface isn't that sophisticated. Boom, there we go. So in addition to it, I have it set up so that we can, boot an instance up. We come over here. Of course, I have to reload.
Running.
And there it is.
I like how immediately your interface is better than OpenStack. It's pretty cool.
And so, of course, it goes in reverse, so I can go over here and, because I don't want to save Philippine AP on, oops. And in a few seconds. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is just a really simple example using the API. Actually, I wanted to get a lot further than this on it just to show some more stuff on it, but the OpenStack API was the most obnoxious thing to work with, and I had some hiccups to learn with Angular 2. Actually, one of which I'll point out. So we can actually go through and loop through the objects that we have in our, or that it's reactively loading from Meteor. Let me open it up here. All right, so this .servers is servers.find. That actually doesn't return an array. That returns an object, a cursor, and then Angular actually loops over it right here because it has an API to know when to refresh and all that other stuff. When data changes in Meteor, it tells Angular to refresh that list. But the only way that that happens is if you do this right here. You cannot use Angular's out-of-the-box bootstrap. That is like the most important thing because it took me like 3 hours to figure that out because I just didn't know. And you bootstrap it using that bootstrap. You do not use Angular's bootstrap. That's the only, that was like 3 hours worth of work right there. And the other thing is just learning how to play with OpenStack's API specifically. And that can be done over here. You can just use this tool to get post whatever to the OpenStack instance and do whatever you want. So I can do client.put that URL and then it does everything. So those are actually the biggest reasons I didn't get as much done. I wanted to have it do more things where you could rename it and shut down, pause, unpause. But this is kind of the big idea behind it. It gives us a lot of flexibility, and this is actually a decent place to start if we wanted to actually start writing some basic interfaces for OpenStack. So, yep, that's all I got. You guys have is there any questions about it? I'm kind of went through it really fast. What I said, what I say makes sense. I mean, you guys see how I got from A to Z?
That's about as slick as a model in your case of FRC. Yeah, so like, is it pretty robust? Can you do like the querying on Mongo? Like if you get into complex querying and stuff like that, is it pretty robust that way?
Yep. The only stuff the times that it gets difficult is, well, so there's two things with this. First of all, you'll notice that I'm saving data directly to the database from the front end. And as you can imagine, that can be a little bit dangerous if you have sensitive data. Right. So you can apply specific security to it. In addition to it, if you have large amounts of data, you don't want to have data going back and forth to the client for every time any data changes ever. Right. And so that, of course, becomes difficult. And there's a way to disable that. That's through subscriptions. That, what you asked, becomes challenging with one application I had, where I had a collection of every single parcel with their parcel geocoordinates in the city of Strongsville. I had every single one of them in a single collection, and then I had to use that information on the front end. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to just get those specific parcels within a certain geographic area. And it's like GIS stuff doesn't allow you to do the subscription to make sure that you don't pass too much data back and forth. That's really the only time I've ever seen actual issues with it. Okay. But the data sending back and forth is pretty much flawless.
Okay, so then you can, I'm guessing there's probably a way where you can say, let's say you're doing a bad practice, and for some reason you store the username and password in the database. So you return a user record. Can you say, do not return the password as part of the JSON collection?
Yep, you can specifically define what methods come back and who can read or write to any specific.
And then validate data too?
Yep.
Client side, server side could use the same thing. I'm
yep.
assuming the JavaScript could use the same validation.
Yep, that's what it specifically does, yeah. And because, and I didn't show you guys this, where's my base, models, servers. So I went out and built out this servers class a little bit to do things like save and set state. Because we have that object-oriented style, we can go through and we can have any kind of validators, we can have any kind of whatever, and we can have them inherit. So if you wanted to do something like get ID, like create a method called get ID, everything shares the same ID path. So I could do export class servers extends basic model, and then we have all the inheritance and all the nice things that come with that. So yeah.
That's like TypeScript or ES6?
That's ES6, both actually. Yeah. So and TypeScript has interfaces, which is even cooler. Yeah. Yeah. You haven't done
What are some features you're most excited about? Like, that you didn't get a chance to show us?
the data sending back and forth. That to me is like it's the fundamental piece of everything. If you can do that really well, then everything else just kind of ebb and flows. There's nothing really to it. When I look at my praise or whatever, the most challenging parts that we run into is saving data or getting data from the client to the server and putting it in a format that we can use really easily, and error checking and all those kinds of things, making sure you have valid response patterns and response types. It does all that for you because really all you're doing is you're sending data back and forth. That's all that matters. So.
Neat. And it looked like it was pretty fast too. Like, like benchmark wise, it looked like it's pretty performance, production ready.
Yep.
Obviously, Rocket Chat's using it. So.
Yeah. So in development, you can see it actually goes through and passes every single package in one by one. Once you put it in production, it minifies that, compresses it, and sends it out just like that. So.
And if I understand the little bit I know, which is like this much, it's an opinionated language, right? So, or opinionated framework. So the trade-off of that is as long as you follow the way they recommend you do things, you get all that stuff baked in for you. You don't have to worry about modifying JavaScript. You don't have to worry about installing Grunt and Gulp and all that stuff. It's doing all that for you behind the scenes. So it's basically, from what I understand, some JavaScript devs got together and took a lot of best practices and put them into a framework. And this basically said, follow these rules. So you're getting a little less freedom than you would say in another framework, but the trade-off is that other developers coming into it will know exactly that same kind of workflow, right?
Yeah, so that's partially true. It was actually more true a little while ago. So Angular 1.2 or Angular 1.3 or not Angular, Meteor 1.3 was just released, and the big thing with Meteor 1.3 is that you can do CommonJS, AMD. You can do imports basically. Before, what it did is it took all of the JavaScript and just threw it all into one big file, and you couldn't do any kind of modularization. That was a mess, and that's where that became an issue. Now that you have a standardized, way doing imports and modularization with NPM, everything kind of comes together. If you wanted to do things like Grunt or more customized things, you can write packages that will replace Meteor's default way of handling less compiling. For example, it doesn't do less out of the box. So what I did is you can install a plugin that does all your less stuff for you.
Does it prefer stats or does it not do
You can do either, whichever you want. You can install a plugin for either.
So you can think of your OpenStack folder as kind of like a task runner that runs. So you can modify that to run to watch for less or to watch for whatever you want or do.
That it actually does. It does that for you. It says, okay, when a file is changed, do this. It's got a whole bunch of APIs for that.
That's cool.
Yeah. So if you wanted to do some more really custom weird things, you could absolutely do it.
Because you were loading new commits while the server was running, and it would just recompile and then flash it to the screen. Cool.
Yeah.
What does it do when something errors?
Like what?
Does it say you pulled in a new commit and it just doesn't compile down from TypeScript or something like that? Does it throw that up to the user, or does it somehow?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of.
I'm
trying to think of something to break it.
Just remove parentheses from that function.
Yeah, there you go. Why is it so hard to think of a way to break it?
I can think of 1,000 ideas.
All right, so you can see it's compiling it, and it freaked out right here. Oh, error while processing file tells you where the error is, and
So
then
does it serve the old version? That's what
it doesn't do anything. It just.
So it's like it's not up right now.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
was gonna say because I wonder if it's just serving the old version. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Good to know.
Does it have anything for like command line commands? Like if you wanted to add like command line stuff to it?
I know in 1.2 they didn't. I don't know if they added it in 1.3.
Okay. But probably pretty easy. You could just import an NPM package that does that. So you
Probably,
pretty much any NPM package you could use on any other JavaScript. I'm assuming that you can use it on here, right? So what would you think are some of the cons, if you can think of any, or any risks with using it?
The risk is that it's really easy to make it really insecure,
Okay.
like really easy. And then once you have it built out, it is annoying to go through and add all the security, but I guess that's true of any
Why don't
framework.
you just describe PHP? Sorry, I get it all myself.
Jason's like,
You're gonna die.
Well, I always say it's the coder, right?
Yeah.
It's like the difference between Bill Shakespeare and George Bush, right? They both speak English. One just does it really well.
I can't understand Bill Shakespeare.
Right?
So, you better, you know.
talking pros or
I'll tell you what, Bishop, let's go have a beer later. You're a good man.
I understand that.
Wait, can you do Bush doing Old English? Then.
What doth you have here? Cheney by any other name is still Dick.
Perfect.
Let me get a T-shirt that says that.
Nick, I saw you did like the reset where it like cleared out the database because of migrations.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Are you sure?
But it's something that you could write.
Positive. Okay.
So then I think why you even need
Well, I mean, there's places you would need it, but because you have access to what's running on the server, it doesn't really matter.
So would you recommend? Oh, I'm sure. Totally, I didn't want you to ask you a question.
Why is that?
That's right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So would you recommend using this?
That's all
Like,
you
that's all you have someone coming through.
I don't know if it's a
like that.
thing.
Would you recommend this over Spring or?
Oh, by far and away.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, especially because my favorite thing about Java is that it's strongly typed. But with this, with TypeScript, you have type defined. It's fully type defined, so you can do all those things that you do in Java that I really like because I'm super OCD about those kinds of things. But if you don't like it, then you can always not do it. So it's just going to be a matter of setting standards.
So very much.
Yeah, PHP's like that now too.
Yeah.
Now do TypeScript.
But it's not. It's Node is akin to PHP. Meteor is more akin to like Laravel with what's their Elixir? Is that their,
Oh yeah, the thing for like.
their what's their ORM?
Eloquent.
Eloquent. Yeah. It's like Meteor or Laravel with Eloquent with some kind of sock.js and other thing to kind of pull it all together. Yeah.
I mean, that's a problem then too with the server side framework. I mean, to me, it's really exciting to have potential code you can share on the client, and especially with validation. Anybody that's ever done validation, you're working with a different framework on the front end versus the server side.
And it's even more difficult to have. You have the front end, back end validation, but it's even more difficult because you can't handle those errors because you actually have to have a protocol defined for. Okay, the username is required, but they didn't fill out the username. Somehow the front end missed the back end, and so now I have to send an error back to the front end, and the front end has to always know, no matter where it is, what that error means. You have to have all kinds of standards, and it's just a huge mess. This solves so many problems. Yeah. So let's see. Angular 2 does routing for you. What I like about it is this is a completely separate from any other framework that I've ever seen, because most other frameworks are like they give you like a templating language and a way to access the database, and that's typically what like most frameworks kind of give you out of the box. And that's kind of what you have to work with. That's what pretty much all the other frameworks I know of do. This is the only one that I know of that actually does true three-way data binding to front end, back end, and UI.
So how's the community for it? And like, pretty
There's a lot. It's a gigantic community. Yeah.
And I'm guessing it's probably like a plugin architecture where people write plugins for it. And things
Yep.
like that too.
Yep.
That's pretty healthy as well.
Yeah, there's it's called Atmosphere. Let me see if I can find it here. Atmosphere. Here it is.
Do you know of any CMS systems that are built with Meteor?
I do not.
I was just about to ask that too.
I was thinking about that too. The trouble with that is like on the front end of a site, you don't want Meteor. Meteor isn't going to help you on like building mom and pop's pizza shop because you don't need to have reactive data and all that other stuff. that would be this would be a good system where you have a back end that is completely separate from the front end, and the front end is almost some kind of staticky deal that just reads the Meteor data, and then the back end just updates that Meteor data or updates the Mongo data. Too many M's. Updates the Mongo data separately. So, this is their package manager site. They have tons of them. So if I want like less, there's tons of less plugins and
So like file uploaders and all that kind of stuff. I'm betting,
yeah.
Let's search that they have at school. That's a package.
See what else is